Hi there, this is Elena with Black Sheep 303 Creative, and today's project is a rustic fall thank you card that I made by stamping with distress inks. Now, distress inks, you may know this already, are not designed for stamping. They are designed to be used with various techniques. So when you stamp with them, you get kind of a fuzzy, splotchy, not crisp image. And I was okay with that going into this. I knew that that was what was going to happen, and I knew I wanted to make a fall card, but I didn't have a lot of fall colored regular stamping pads. So I thought, well, I've got some great colors in the distress ink line. Why don't I give this a shot? We'll see what happens. So I taped off a 1-inch line with my blue tape there, about 3/4 of the way down on the front of the card, because I knew I wanted to have a space for my grading. And then I also taped off along the top edge to protect the back of the card, because I knew I was going to stamp off the edges. Because my goal here was just to kind of create sort of a random florally leafy fall background. The stamp set I am using is from Hero Arts. It is the Leah Griffith Garden Flowers stamp set. This is a great stamp set. It has a whole bunch of different leaves and flowers and mushrooms and acorns and all kinds of different shapes. So I thought, what a better stamp set to use to create kind of a background. And it's also not a super refined looking flowers. It's more casual. And so I thought that would work with the feel of the kind of splotchy stamp impressions I was expecting to get. So for this first flower, I used two different colors. I used mustard seed, and then I inked up just the edges with some barn door to give it sort of a two-toned effect. And you can see on that first one that it does stamp pretty splotchy. And the second one is a little better. Like, you can see some of the detail on the inside of that flower a little better. But for the most part, the detail on the flower is lost just from kind of the splotchy nature of the inks. But that's okay. I knew that was what was going to happen. And that was kind of the look I was going for, so it didn't bother me at the time. Now, that leaf sprig I just stamped with mowed lawn, and then this smaller leaf I am now stamping with forest moss and a little bit of mowed lawn to give it kind of a two-tony effect on that leaf. And you can see what I'm doing is basically sort of moving the different shapes around and changing their orientation to get both the color and the shape sort of spread in a nice balanced way across the background. That sprig of flowers that I just stamped there, that's a good example of how these inks stamp, especially with something that's a little more detailed. You really basically lose a lot of that detail. Like, all those individual little sprigs on that spray of flowers, it's hard to see. So I do fix that a little bit later. There's something I do. So I love the little mushrooms. I stamped that smaller mushroom in aged mahogany, and now this bigger one I'm stamping in pumice stone. I think that touch of brown and gray like really added to the fall look of this card, so I was super happy with that. And here's a little fall leaf that I'm doing with carved pumpkin and barn door, like that two-tone kind of changing leaf effect going on there. And I also felt like I needed a little more orange on the overall background. And I've got this little tiny starbursty flower here that I'm using in wild honey to fill in some of the gaps. And then my very last thing I use is this acorn that is super cute. And I used tea dye to stamp the acorn. And that was, again, another nice little touch of brown that I thought worked really well with the fall color palette. So as I mentioned earlier, the centers of the first flowers I stamped and then those flower sprigs kind of lost a lot of the detail. So what I decided to do was take a marker and kind of go over those little areas to try to enhance them a bit. So with that spray of flowers, I am very sketchily drawing circles around each little sprig as well as the stems, but it's a very, very casual, unrefined drawing. Like, I'm not trying to be precise at all. And then with the centers of these flowers, I used my aged mahogany marker and just kind of basically did the exact same thing. I filled in the dots again and filled in little stems again, in a pretty sketchy way, just to be in keeping with the fairly casual, rustic-y feel of the overall background. But I also thought it added something to kind of get those tiny, small details back in. I decided I wanted to add a border to the greeting strip. I guess that's what it would be called, a greeting strip. I don't know. We'll call it that. And so I used my barn door marker to add a little border to that. I did let the first line dry before I went in and put in the second line. Believe me, I have learned that the hard way. I have smeared many a marker with my T-square by not letting it dry. So I was smart that time and actually did let it dry. So for my greeting, I am using the thank you from the Hero Arts Leah Griffith Spring Hellos stamp set. This is a great thank you, and I thought some gold embossing putter was really needed on this for, it's a fall card, and gold is perfect for fall, right? Like, you gotta have gold. So I like the scriptiness of the thank you. Also, again, it's not super refined. It's a little more fun and casual. So I thought it worked really well with the overall feel of the card. And because I can't leave well enough alone, I had to add some sequins. I just couldn't help myself. I thought it just needed a tiny bit extra. So I grabbed some metallic sequins, and so these first two are copper that I'm putting down, and then this is a larger gold one, and then the last one is a rose gold. I put those all down with Ranger Multi-Medium Matte Adhesive. And that is essentially the end of the card. And I liked the card so much that I wondered, if I did it using different colors, could it be seasonal? Like, would it work for other seasons? So it basically reproduced pretty much the same pattern. I just used different colors of distress ink. So the one in the upper right, I thought was more wintry with I used grays and light blues and light pinks. And then on the left, I used a brighter color palette, like the pinks and oranges and vibrant purples for a spring-summer look. Now there you go, look at the fall card. That was my original inspiration for the whole thing. And then here's a look at kind of the stamping and the sketchiness of my drawing as well. And those are the 3 cards that I wound up with in the end. So if you have not tried stamping with distress inks, I definitely think that it's worth a shot, especially for kind of a rustic background. It works very well. If you're interested in the specific distress inks I used for each of the seasonal cards, that information is over on my blog, blacksheep303.com. It is listed in the supply list for this project, and there is a link to that below in the description box. Thank you so much for watching. I always appreciate it. If you'd like to leave me a comment either here or on my blog, that would be great. Love to hear from you. Thanks.